I'd like to welcome to the stage the chairman of West Sussex, our very own Mike Glennon.
Hello, conference. I hope you liked the entree music, one of my favourite groups from the 1970s called Rainbow, a heavy rock group, though when I said Rainbow you might think it had other connotations nowadays, but it's Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow, God bless them. Now, it says, "Can't happen here, can it?" those lyrics, and that is the theme of what I want to say to you for the next 15 or 20 minutes. When you think back in the past, people wrote about what might come about in the future, and disbelief is what most people have. It can't happen here. But the world is changing, as if you hadn't noticed it. And in our lifetime, we've seen a clear shift from a world of stability and common sense to a world best described as a madhouse. Monty Python's surreal sketches. You remember the Ministry of Silly Walks? I was debating whether to do a quick demonstration, but I've decided against it, you'll be happy to know. I'm not tall enough to do a John Cleese. But the surreal sketches have been exceeded by a modern surreality, but one that has nothing to do with humour, more to do with the terror forecast in the writings of a Mr. Blair. Eric Blair, not Anthony. The pace of change in the coming decades will accelerate, and it's about the outlook for the political landscape of this country that I want to talk to you today. Now, some of the things I say, indeed, will pick up on some of the things mentioned earlier by Carl and others, but it's to the future I'm looking. All political landscapes, no matter how complex, can be assessed in simple terms as a spectrum. Until the last decade, our own British spectrum stretched between left-wing and right-wing. And all of us, the political parties, sat somewhere. You're either socialist or capitalist or somewhere in between. But in the last decade, that's changed, hasn't it? You think back to the old days, it's changed in the last decade. It is now more about Europhilia and Euroscepticism. And that is a battle we hope to see a successful conclusion to soon and have a complete and utter withdrawal from the destructive clutches of the European Union. And as Kirsten said, indeed, that is the overriding objective. Right now it is, right now. But one thing is for sure. In the relatively near future, Brexit will become history. But history will not end there, and the real battle for British Britain, with absolute certainty, still lies ahead. Let us not underestimate what we shall be facing. I quote here from a speech given on the 18th of June, 1940, in the House of Commons. What General Weygand called the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization and our own British way of life. The words, of course, of a certain Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. During recent decades, we've allowed well over 10 million people to come to this island in perpetuity. With their much higher birth rates, the population of this country is now probably double what it would otherwise have been. Our indigenous peoples in particular, like the indigenous Europeans, have come to realize that the biggest and indeed the only Armageddon facing mankind, is chronic overpopulation. And accordingly, and wisely, our reproduction rates have been falling fast, like a stone, in fact. But imagine a Britain with a future population of just 20 million. Imagine the huge benefits for environment, empty roads, cheaper housing. We heard a bit earlier from Joe Simons about the terrible cost of affording property for a young person. With the demand so high, that is bound to be. But no, we have a population which is estimated by some retail associations at around 80 million. Don't believe the government censuses. It's the retailers that know how much toilet paper's used in a year. That's a much better count on the population than trumped-up censuses. And the 2021 event will be a very interesting one because I don't know how the government is going to continue to conceal these facts from the British people. And yet people still talk fervently about the benefits of immigration. Now, we've always said on that word of immigration, it's about space. It is about space, not race. Individuals coming around the world and marrying in, it is the most natural thing. It is a good thing genetically. My own wife came here on that basis. I think Gerard Batten's wife did. My sister-in-law did. But what we've been seeing is vast ingress of whole communities. So what of the coming political landscape? That is the real thrust of my talk today. Certain minorities have little or no intention whatsoever of assimilating into the British way of life, and one in particular envisages eventually ousting indigenous British culture from this land and replacing it with their own culture, so radically alien to ours. Problem is, however, they will not remain a minority, and on present demographic extrapolations, they'll become a majority later this century. Very soon now, we will see the emergence of a powerful new political party, which will grow quickly in line with the rapid multiplication of their supporters. Presently, they shelter, fairly successfully, within the Labour Party. But soon they will launch their own independent party and rapidly, and in some cases instantly, take full control of districts, boroughs, counties, cities right across this land. When it comes, it'll come quickly. Given the vagaries of our much maligned first-past-the-post voting system, of course it's not that at all, it's winner takes all, isn't it? We're very aware of how successful a relatively small party can be if they draw their support from very tightly defined territories. I mean, witness the droves of SNP MPs at Westminster drawn from a very small overall vote share. The same will apply to a new party drawing its support from a cluster of industrial towns across the North and the Midlands. And remember, long before becoming one of the larger parties, a substantial newcomer could well hold the all-important balance of power. We know how powerful that can be. Even the Libs found that 2010 until 2015, didn't they? During the 20s and 30s ahead of us, as this new phase unfolds, as it surely will, a huge political strategic question will remain. How should the rest of us vote? Will the rest of us, who will be a declining proportion of the electorate anyway, continue to split our votes across the Conservatives, Labour, the Dim Libs, Green, UKIP, Scott Nat, Plaid Cymru? I leave Northern Ireland out of this because over there politics is driven by a different set of factors, and I shall come back to those in a moment or two. Yes, I think we will, through gormlessness, continue to split our votes and squabble among ourselves in the time-honoured way, because that is democracy, as we know it or knew it. And then we'll wake up and realise that differences between those parties I've just mentioned are actually slight compared with the chasm we face when regarding that new emerging party, which will drive an agenda wholly at odds, not just with our traditional British squabbles, but with our way of life, our culture, our values, our beliefs, and our freedoms. Even the Gormlists will then see the vital need to coalesce around one party to champion all of those cherished British values. I don't know exactly what that party is going to be. I don't know what it will be called, what its logo and colour scheme will be. But I do know it won't be the Conservative Party. That party has no ideology at all, other than retaining its own hegemony. And they would be just as content presiding over a capitalist Britain, a communist Britain, a socialist Britain, a Marxist Britain, or an alien Britain, as long as they can be in charge. Does that ring true? The Labour Party won't exist. In fact, it's going on the skids now. It hasn't existed as a Labour Party for many years, and it will have lost millions of its current supporters to the emerging new party anyway. The Dim Libs don't stand for anything, nor have they ever. In fact, their only creed is to tolerate anything and everything, including blatantly intolerant minorities, on their gleeful but blind path to inevitable anarchy. Liberalism taken to the nth degree takes you to one place only. As you'll read in one of my pamphlets today, it takes you to anarchy. It's ironic. The Brexit Party will be distant history. Can you not see, therefore, there's going to be a truly massive void in the political landscape for a patriotic party defending Britishness, that cultural icon that has made this country the preferred bolt hole for all the world's desperate factions, whose own domains have become, usually through their own making, so unpalatable, and that's putting it politely. The vision I described to you here today is virtually certain to materialise here in this green and pleasant land well before the middle of this century, probably a lot before. That is why this party, UKIP, must survive. Because we, and only we, put the defence of British Britain to the fore. Only we have had the courage, well, some of us have had the courage, to start discussing these unpopular things right in front of the media and standing their ground in front of the cantankerous idiots that run the mainstream media. A leader needs many different traits. The words of Napoleon just suddenly come to me as I'm speaking here. And one of the things he said was about generals. He said, if there's one thing I admire about a general, it's courage. So may this party continue to be brave enough to lay down a path of tough, radical policy commensurate with the dire threats that await us. It's no good as being a bunch of purple Tories. You'll get nowhere. Go and wash your car, go and do the garden. Don't waste your time trying to be a purple Tory. It doesn't work. You know this. All of you here today have witnessed some party colleagues recently, either failing to renew their membership or defecting to that other Brexit party. My retort to all such wets and witherers has been consistent. Polite, but consistent. If you're a patriot who wants to participate politically in the preservation of our Britishness, there's only one place to be. We've not even minded if rank and file members lend a helping hand to the Brexit Party. But those who leave us do one thing. They abandon utterly the battle for Britain. One day, in the not-too-distant future, large numbers of the people will be saying, UKIP, they've been right all along, haven't they? If only we'd listened to them. or rather not listened to the tirade of lies and fake news rammed down their throats by the mainstream media and their globalist New Order puppeteers. I mentioned Northern Ireland earlier, a province I admire and know well, where voting is driven by different factors, sectarian factors, where the usual subtle array of political considerations is largely sidelined. Whether one party is more environmental than the other is not an issue. Whether one is more socially progressive or economically more continent or more innovative at improving the education system, it counts for not one jot at the ballot box. You vote according to which side of a cultural line you stand. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the way it works around much of the world, and sadly and tragically, in this wonderful island of ours, it is going to be the same here one day in the not too distant future. Among our political priorities in this land as a whole should be measures to slow down the electoral impact of demographic change, including proportional representation and a codified written constitution, which lays down the ground rules for protecting British Britain, key among these principles being zero recognition or tolerance of legal codes other than the one for all. The cruel irony is that today's suburban liberal lovies, there's quite a few of them around this part of Britain, champagne socialists, green beans and Brussels sprouts, are the sort of people who would welcome the emergence of a legal diversity and would damn as fascist the notion that only one set of laws should prevail. And yet these very people will be the first and the loudest to squeal one day soon about misogyny, homophobia, polygamy, disregard for animal suffering, and do go and visit the stand in the exhibition, won't you, later, intolerance of other religions, and how shall we say, a casual attitude to sexual relations with minors. That means children, not coal miners, by the way. If you live in South Wales or these mining areas, that's a different thing, it's up to you. So as Margaret Thatcher once observed, funny old world. I spoke earlier about our modern world, the madhouse. I well recall a comment made by a wise man in the West Midlands in the late 1960s, when contemplating our nationhood and the disastrous demographic journey it was embarking upon. He said, "We must be mad. We must be mad." Yes, we were. We've become much, much madder. But the one and only remaining question in the years ahead is whether we'll choose to continue our madness. I guess, if we do, we'll deserve everything we get. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me.